Oh my god.
What is it?
Skeletons.
Skeletons!
Yes.
Oh my god, look at that. There's bodies in here.
For more than 2,200 years, Petra has stood silent in the desert, a city carved from stone and wrapped in mystery. Known as the Rose-Red City, it has drawn millions with its towering facades, ancient tombs, and secrets buried deep within its cliffs. Historians believed its story had already been told, that every chamber had been mapped, every legend explained. But they were wrong. In 2024, something changed. Beneath the sacred ground of Petra, archaeologists uncovered a hidden, sealed chamber, one that had remained untouched for centuries. What lay inside was not treasure, not history as we understand it, but something far more disturbing. A discovery so dark, it challenges everything we thought we knew about this ancient civilization. Because Petra was not just a city of beauty, it was a city of secrets. And some secrets were never meant to be found. Subscribe now, because what was hidden beneath Petra is only the beginning of a story far more terrifying than anyone imagined. Petra, the legendary Rose-Red City, is a place where history and mystery still collide. Counted among the world's most iconic archaeological wonders, this ancient city in Jordan was carved directly into towering rock cliffs over 2,200 years ago by the Nabataeans. The Nabataeans were an early Arab civilization that began as nomadic traders, moving across harsh deserts. Over time, they gained immense wealth by controlling vital trade routes that carried spices, incense, and silk between distant lands. With this power and prosperity, they built extraordinary cities, temples, and tombs, none more impressive than Petra itself. Yet despite their achievements, their true origins remain uncertain, adding to the mystery that surrounds them. To reach Petra's most famous structure, the treasury, visitors must pass through the Siku, a long, narrow canyon, flanked by massive rock walls stretching nearly a kilometer. As you walk through this passage, the space suddenly opens, revealing the treasury in a breathtaking moment. Towering and intricately carved, its columns and detailed facade resemble a grand palace frozen in stone. For many first-time visitors, it's almost impossible to believe that such precision was achieved entirely by hand so many centuries ago. For generations, locals believed the treasury held more than history. Legends claimed it concealed the hidden riches of a pharaoh. This belief came from the large carved urn at the top of the structure, which many thought was filled with gold. Even today, marks believed to be bullet impacts can be seen, left behind by those who once tried to break it open. Yet archaeologists have never found treasure inside. Instead, they remain divided about its true purpose. Some argue it was a royal tomb. Others believe it served a religious role, and some suggest it may have changed function over time. Across Petra, hundreds of similar rock-cut structures line the cliffs, most of them tombs. Because of this, researchers often refer to Petra as a vast city of the dead. Burial chambers stretch throughout the valley, but the treasury stands apart. Its size, decoration, and position at the city's entrance suggest it held a deeper significance. And if Petra itself is filled with tombs, it raises an unsettling possibility that even beneath its greatest monument, more may lie hidden. Most visitors come, capture photos of the treasury, and leave, never questioning what might exist below the surface. But for decades, archaeologists suspected there was more to Petra than meets the eye. Local stories spoke of sealed chambers and hidden voids carved deep within the stone. Some claimed that striking certain areas near the treasury produced a hollow echo, hinting at empty spaces below. Others whispered that parts of the forecourt were avoided at night, as if something there was not meant to be disturbed. These accounts were never proven, yet they kept the mystery alive. With no way to explore beneath the surface, archaeologists could only speculate. That's why the discovery of a sealed space beneath the treasury stunned the world. For the first time, real evidence suggested that Petra was still hiding secrets that had remained untouched for centuries, waiting in silence beneath the stone. The discovery of a sealed chamber raised immediate and unsettling questions. Why had it been closed off? What were the Nabataeans trying to conceal? Could it be a royal burial, a sacred repository, or something so disturbing that it was never meant to be uncovered? But before any of these mysteries could be explored, archaeologists faced a challenge that seemed impossible to overcome: getting approval to dig beneath the treasury. And this was no ordinary permission. The ground in front of the Alkazni, known as the forecourt, had long been considered untouchable. Every day, thousands of visitors stood there. It was the heart of Petra's experience, the place where stories were told, photos were taken, and first impressions were formed. Disturbing that space wasn't just risky, it was politically and culturally sensitive. For years, the answer to archaeologists had been firm and consistent: no excavation would ever be allowed. Still, they didn't give up. Proposal after proposal was submitted, each one promising safer techniques and better technology. But authorities remained unconvinced. The concern was simple but serious. Any damage to the treasury could mean losing not only a priceless cultural monument, but also a major source of national income for Jordan. For decades, the answer never changed. The risk was too great. The treasury was simply too important to touch. Then, in 2024, something shifted. After years of debate, Jordan's Department of Antiquities finally approved a tightly controlled excavation. But the conditions were unlike anything seen before. This wasn't about searching for treasure. It was about careful scientific research, with absolute priority given to preserving the monument. The rules were strict. Every trench had to be reversible, meaning the ground could be restored exactly as it was. Every step had to be recorded in detail, down to the smallest grain of soil. Nothing could be rushed. The entire operation was designed to resemble a delicate surgical procedure rather than a traditional excavation. To handle such a sensitive mission, multiple organizations joined forces. The Petra Development and Tourism Region Authority managed the site's role as a global attraction. The Petra National Trust ensured local knowledge and community concerns were respected. The American Center of Research provided logistical support and academic credibility. Meanwhile, the University of St. Andrews contributed advanced scanning and dating technologies. Together, they formed a team built on trust and precision. Even so, tension remained. Some experts feared that even the slightest mistake could cause structural damage to the treasury. At the same time, local whispers added another layer of unease, stories suggesting that certain places in Petra had been sealed for a reason, and that disturbing them could bring consequences no one could predict. Whether rooted in science or superstition, these concerns weighed heavily on everyone involved. Before any digging could begin, one thing was clear: they needed to understand what lay beneath the surface without disturbing it. Excavating blindly was out of the question. So instead, they turned to advanced, non-invasive technology. Using ground-penetrating radar, they sent pulses deep into the earth, tracking how signals bounced back to reveal hidden structures. Resistivity surveys measured how electrical currents moved through the ground, helping detect possible voids or walls. Magnetometry identified subtle changes in the magnetic field, often a sign of human activity beneath the surface. Each method had its limits, but together they formed a powerful system for mapping the unseen. Inside a temporary field tent, the data began to take shape. On glowing screens, lines and patterns shifted and pulsed with each scan. To the untrained eye, it looked abstract, but to the archaeologists, it was something else entirely. A hidden story beginning to reveal itself beneath the stone. To many of the researchers, the patterns on the screens felt almost alive, like a pulse, rising and falling with each sweep of the radar. In the beginning, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The scans revealed familiar features, the ancient drainage systems carved by the Nabataeans to shield the Alkazne from flooding, along with natural fractures in the sandstone. Everything matched what was already known. For a moment, some on the team began to think the technology would only confirm existing knowledge, nothing more. But then, something changed. Hidden among the expected patterns was a shape that didn't belong. It stood out immediately, clean, sharp, and unmistakably geometric, a rectangular form with edges far too precise to be natural. This wasn't a crack or a channel. It looked deliberate, as if it had been carved with purpose. At first, a few researchers suspected a technical glitch, but when the same form appeared again and again in repeated scans, the atmosphere shifted. The room fell silent. Everyone understood. They weren't looking at an error. They were looking at something real. The structure was larger than anticipated, positioned deeper than known tunnels, and unlike anything ever recorded beneath the site. Officially, it was given a simple label, Anomaly C. But away from reports and data sheets, the team began calling it something else. Around quiet conversations at night, it earned a more ominous name, the Locked Chamber. It wasn't just a name. It carried a feeling, a suggestion that this space had been intentionally hidden and carefully sealed. The scans revealed edges too perfect to be natural and a hollow space too precise to be accidental. As one archaeologist later put it looks like someone built this room and then made sure no one would ever enter it again. Speculation spread quickly. Some believed it could be a concealed tomb, possibly reserved for Petra's elite. Others wondered if it was part of an ancient, forgotten water system, but local stories added a darker layer. According to long-standing whispers, the Nabataeans sometimes sealed spaces to contain dangerous things, plague victims, cursed remains, or objects tied to forbidden rituals. None of these ideas could be proven, but they made the discovery feel even more unsettling. What the scans confirmed was undeniable. Something was down there, and the only way to uncover the truth was to dig. But excavating beneath the treasury would be no simple task. It meant carefully removing layers of earth, step by step, knowing that each movement brought them closer to a space that may have been meant to remain hidden forever. Breaking that seal would not just be excavation. It would be a descent into the unknown. When the digging finally began, the mood around the site was tense. Everyone understood this was far from a routine excavation. At first, standard tools were used to clear the upper layers of soil, but as the team approached the suspected structure, their methods changed completely. Metal tools were set aside. Brushes and wooden instruments took their place, ensuring that nothing below would be damaged, even by the smallest mistake. Every action was slow, controlled, and deliberate. It felt less like digging and more like uncovering something fragile, something that had been buried for centuries. Soil was removed in thin layers, sometimes just a few centimeters at a time. Every fragment was sifted, photographed, and carefully recorded. Even the smallest traces of pottery or charcoal were preserved for study. Progress was steady, but never rushed. Teams worked in shifts, maintaining focus without sacrificing precision. The entire site was treated like a surgical operation, where accuracy mattered far more than speed. As they dug deeper, the soil became heavier and more compact, hardened by centuries of pressure. Then the first unmistakable sign appeared. Carved steps began to emerge, descending into darkness. Soon after, smooth stone walls followed, carefully constructed, holding back the surrounding earth as if designed to keep the space sealed indefinitely. The craftsmanship stunned the team. This was no rough construction. The stones were cut with precision and fitted so tightly that no gaps remained, not even enough for air to pass through. It didn't look like a simple closure. It looked permanent, intentional, and that raised a chilling question. Who sealed it, and why? Some theories suggested that laborers may have been forced to close the chamber, fully aware of what was inside. Others believed the order came directly from Nabataean elites, not to honor the dead, but to hide something they wanted erased from history. The flawless seal didn't suggest respect. It suggested fear. Whoever closed it wanted it forgotten. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Cameras recorded as the final barrier gave way, opening a narrow passage into the void. A rush of cold, stale air escaped, air that had been trapped for nearly 2,200 years. It carried a dry, ancient scent. One archaeologist later described it as breathing in the past. Another admitted that approaching the opening felt deeply unsettling, as though they were stepping into a place never meant to be disturbed. Theories began to spread almost immediately. Some experts believed it could be a ritual chamber. Others pointed to local legends, claiming that certain spaces were sealed not to protect what was inside, but to protect the living from it. There were stories of chambers used to contain disease, locking away infection so it could never escape. Others spoke of dangerous relics or forbidden objects hidden underground to prevent their use in dark practices. And some believed such places were cursed, designed to imprison restless spirits within stone walls. None of these ideas could be proven, but every possibility carried the same weight. A growing sense of unease that something about this chamber was deeply, disturbingly wrong. What lay beneath the Alkazni was no ordinary hollow. It was vast, intentional, and far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. And as the team prepared to move forward, a chilling realization set in. They were standing on the edge of something truly terrifying, a tomb hidden in the shadow of the treasury. Once the opening was secured, the team stepped inside, their lights cutting through the darkness with cautious precision. This was no natural cave carved by time. The chamber had been carefully constructed. Along the walls were evenly spaced recesses, features commonly seen in Nabataean tombs, often used for offerings, secondary burials, or symbolic placements. Everything about the layout suggested planning and purpose. Nothing here was accidental. Then came the moment that stopped everyone cold. Human remains. The first skeleton lay undisturbed on a low stone platform, its bones perfectly aligned, skull, spine, arms, and legs all in place. It was clear this burial had never been touched. Nearby, another body rested in the same position. As the light spread further into the chamber, more forms emerged from the darkness. The number grew, at least 12 individuals in total. Some were clearly adults, while others were smaller, likely children. But what stood out most was the care. These bodies were not scattered or thrown aside. Each one had been placed deliberately. Some rested alone, in carved niches, while others lay side by side, hinting at possible relationships between them. Objects had been left beside many of the dead. A small bowl near one hand, a jar placed carefully by another's feet. Traces of bronze and iron were found near ribs and hips, possibly fragments of jewelry or personal items. One skeleton held a ceramic vessel so precisely positioned against its ribs it seemed as though it had been held in its final moments. These were not lavish burials, but they were meaningful. Every detail suggested intention, symbolism over wealth. Yet what unsettled the archaeologists most was the condition of the chamber itself. Unlike many tombs in Petra, which had been looted or damaged over time, this one was perfectly sealed. Layers of sediment had locked everything in place. The air was stale, untouched for centuries. The walls showed no signs of intrusion. For experts used to broken remains and disturbed sites, the preservation felt almost unnatural. Several later admitted that the silence inside was deeply unnerving, as if time itself had been frozen, and they had stepped into a moment that was never meant to be witnessed. Work slowed even further. Every bone was mapped with exact precision. Fragile remains were stabilized. Each artifact was catalogued with extreme care, but even as the team documented what they had found, a growing suspicion took hold. This wasn't the full story, because beneath this chamber, something else remained. A deeper space, still sealed, still untouched by light for centuries. The real discovery was yet to come. When the second chamber was finally opened, the atmosphere changed instantly. The silence felt heavier, almost suffocating. A rush of air burst outward, thick, foul, and overwhelming. Masks went on immediately, but even through filters, the smell lingered. It was a mix of decay, ash, and something sharp that made breathing feel wrong. One archaeologist later described it as breathing in death itself. As the first beams of light swept across the interior, the walls appeared darkened, stained with soot, as if fire had once burned within this space. But it was the floor that revealed the true horror. Unlike the orderly burials above, there was no structure here, no care, no dignity. Bodies lay piled together in chaotic heaps, twisted into unnatural positions. Limbs were tangled. Skulls lay at disturbing angles. Some faced downward, others sprawled across one another. This was not deliberate placement. This was panic. This was violence. The bones told their own story. Fractures appeared that could not be explained by time alone. Skulls were cracked, ribs shattered, joints torn apart. Some jaws were frozen wide open, as if locked in silent screams. Among the most haunting sights was a small skeleton curled tightly against a larger one, likely a child in the arms of an adult. Over centuries, sediment had fused them together, preserving what looked like a final, desperate embrace. And then, things became even more unsettling. Near one wall, 3 bodies had been arranged differently, carefully, deliberately. One showed signs of status, traces of fine jewelry and bronze fittings. The other 2 were younger, their remains marked by violent trauma. Some experts began to consider a disturbing possibility, that these individuals may have been sacrificed, forced to accompany a higher status figure into death. The idea divided the team. Some rejected it outright, unwilling to believe such practices existed here. Others pointed to the evidence, the positioning, the injuries, the undeniable intention behind it. Scattered among the remains were strange vessels, unlike typical Nabataean offerings. Their presence only deepened the mystery, hinting that whatever happened in this chamber was far darker than anyone had expected. The residue inside those vessels was thick, dark, and organic, difficult to identify at first glance. Early tests revealed unusually high iron levels, and almost instantly, disturbing theories began to emerge. Some suggested it could be human blood, possibly mixed with ash or ground bone. Others believed it was a ritual substance used in ceremonies tied to death. The most chilling idea was that it may have been forced upon the victims before they died, or spread across their bodies as part of something far more sinister. Whatever the truth may be, one thing was clear. This chamber did not feel sacred. It felt desperate. Every detail pointed toward fear, not reverence. The evidence suggested that people were driven inside, sealed away, and deliberately erased from the world above. Some researchers argue that if this was a plague chamber, sealing it may have been an act of protection. But if it was something else, something darker, then the silence speaks of a hidden truth. Not preservation, but concealment. For archaeologists, this discovery is more than just a breakthrough. It is a warning. Not everything buried in the past is meant to be uncovered without consequence. Some places demand caution, respect, and restraint. Petra has long been celebrated as a symbol of beauty and human achievement, but now it reveals another side, a story of secrets, fear, and something deliberately hidden beneath its stone surface. And it leaves us with a haunting question. If Petra could conceal something like this for nearly 2,200 years, what else remains buried beneath the deserts of Jordan? And what might happen if those secrets are finally brought into the light? Petra is no longer just the rose-red city. It is a place of buried darkness, where the past still whispers through stone. So what do you think this sealed chamber was truly meant for? A protection against disease, a ritual site, or something far more terrifying? Let me know your theory in the comments. And if you want to uncover more hidden mysteries like this, make sure to subscribe.